It's time for Nebraska to step up and once again be a beacon of human dignity, equality, and the sanctity of life. The same state that stood firm against the evils of slavery must now stand against the legalized murder of the most vulnerable among us, the unborn. This isn't just another political issue. It's a moral imperative. Nebraska has a rich history of standing on the right side of monumental moral debates. After the Civil War, Nebraska entered the Union as a slave-free state, solidifying its commitment to freedom and justice. Embedded in the state's constitution is an amendment that explicitly prohibits slavery and involuntary servitude. Nebraska's very foundation is built on the principle of protecting human dignity and life, reflecting the state's historical stance against oppression and the devaluation of human life. Just as Nebraska played a pivotal role in the ultimate ending of slavery and the rise of the anti-slavery party, it now faces another critical moment. Nebraskans can stand for life once again, this time for the preborn. Nebraskans must not falter at this moment. They must ensure that their Constitution upholds the sanctity of life rather than enshrining the culture of death. This November, Nebraska arrives at a pivotal juncture with two ballot initiatives poised to enshrine the murder of the most vulnerable citizens within the very bedrock of the state's Constitution. These initiatives, though different in approach, both pave the way for the continued slaughter of the innocent. I'm calling on every Nebraskan who values life to vote no on both measures. Initiative 1, the Pro-Abortion Amendment. The first initiative, led by organizations such as Planned Parenthood and the ACLU of Nebraska, seeks to amend the Nebraska Constitution to protect the right to abortion up to the point of fetal viability. This initiative is nothing short of a constitutional assault on the sanctity of life. By embedding the so-called right to abortion in the state's constitution, this measure would effectively dehumanize the unborn, reducing their worth to a matter of weeks or months. Let's be clear. Viability is a moving target defined not by an intrinsic human value, but by the arbitrary standards of medical technology. The initiative is a gross violation of the principle that every human being, from the moment of conception, is made in the image of God and deserves complete protection under the law. Proponents of this amendment fail to acknowledge that viability is not a measure of a human being's worth. Whether a child is capable of surviving outside the womb does not determine whether they deserve to live. This initiative would enshrine a perverse standard into the state's constitution, making it legally acceptable to terminate a life simply because the child hasn't reached an arbitrary level of development. The result, a constitution that sanctions death rather than protecting life. Initiative 2, the ProLife Compromise. The second initiative, promoted by some pro-life organizations, is just as dangerous. It proposes to ban abortion after 12 weeks with exceptions for rape, incest, and the life of the mother. This measure might sound like a step in the right direction, but it is a trap, a dangerous compromise that perpetuates the very evil it claims to oppose. By allowing abortion up to 12 weeks, this initiative sends a clear message that it is acceptable to murder a child as long as it is done early enough. Worse, by including exceptions, it perpetuates the lie that some lives are less valuable than others, based on how they were conceived or the circumstances of their birth. This initiative is a feeble, diluted attempt to appease both sides of the debate, providing just enough to pretend moral superiority while permitting the legal destruction of human life. The mere consideration of exceptions for rape, incest, and the life of the mother betrays the essential belief that life is sacred from conception. These exceptions aren't acts of compassion, they're acts of compromise, and compromising with evil is nothing short of surrender. The false choice, death at different stages. These two initiatives present Nebraskans with a false choice, enshrine death in our Constitution at viability or at 12 weeks. But whether it's at 12 weeks or viability, the outcome is the same: the legal, state-sanctioned murder of innocent human beings. Both measures are fundamentally flawed and morally indefensible. They reflect a culture that has lost its way, where the most vulnerable among us are sacrificed on the altar of convenience and choice. The truth is that both initiatives are two sides of the same coin. One side claims to defend women's rights by allowing abortions up to a certain point, while the other pretends to protect life, but still permits its destruction under certain conditions. Both of these initiatives fail to address the real issue, the sanctity of human life. They merely debate the terms under which ending that life is acceptable. But these debates are meaningless for those who understand that every life is sacred. The only acceptable standard is the complete protection of life from conception to natural death. Why abortion in Nebraska matters to Omaha. Having lived in Nebraska for 12 years, I've been deeply committed to advocating for the protection of the unborn. I've dedicated countless hours at the entrances of late-term abortionist Leroy Carhart's facility and Planned Parenthood's clinics, witnessing the heartbreaking loss of hundreds of innocent lives. These experiences have not only deepened my resolve, but have also allowed me to be a part of moments of hope where women, by God's grace, chose life for their children. My commitment to this cause is unwavering, rooted in the belief that every life is sacred. As the co-host of the Just Thinking podcast, I continue to use the moniker Omaha. Why? Because not only have I lived and worked in this city, but my adult children still live here. Protecting life in Nebraska is not just a matter of public policy for me, it's personal. Omaha is home, and what happens there matters deeply, not just to me, but to the legacy we leave for future generations. The tremendous lift to remove or amend. Even more concerning is the permanence these amendments would carry if they were passed. Once enshrined into the Nebraska Constitution, removing or amending them would require a Herculean effort. The process to amend the Constitution involves gathering a significant number of signatures, typically around 10% of the registered voters in the state, just to get an amendment on the ballot. Then, it must pass a statewide vote. This is no easy task and is intentionally designed to ensure that constitutional changes are made only with substantial public support. If these amendments are passed, we could be locking in the legal right to terminate life at 12 weeks for years, if not decades, making it incredibly difficult to reverse course and fully protect the unborn. These are not merely simple laws that the legislature, Nebraska's unicameral, can easily alter or repeal, like the current 12-week ban. They are fundamental amendments to the state's constitution. Such changes would create an almost insurmountable barrier to achieving true justice for the unborn. A call to action: vote no on both initiatives. Nebraskans, the time for compromise is over. It's time to stand firm in our commitment to protect all human life without exception. We cannot allow the state's constitution to become a document that enshrines the right to kill the most defenseless among us. I urge you to vote no on both of these initiatives. Reject the false choice between death at different stages and demand that our laws reflect the truth that every human being, from conception to natural death, has an inalienable right to life. It's time to stand. Nebraska's state constitution should be a shield for the innocent, not a sword against them. Let's ensure that Nebraska remains a state where life is cherished, not a state that enshrines death in its most sacred document. Vote no on both initiatives because every life matters and every life deserves protection. Make a statement that Nebraskans choose life wholly, unequivocally, and without compromise. This is the moment to stand on the right side of history, to protect the innocent, and to reject the culture of death that these initiatives would cement into the state's constitution. Let us not be swayed by the rhetoric of compromise or the false promise of safety. Let us instead stand firm in our conviction that life is sacred and worth defending at every stage. Vote no, not just because it's the right thing to do, but because it's the only thing to do.